Well, while One America is conducting its own in-depth investigation, Judicial Watch is also taking action to solve unanswered questions surrounding the death of Seth Rich. One America's John Hines caught up with the president of Judicial Watch and has this report from Washington.
Tom, I just wanted to ask you, I know that you've begun an investigation into the death of the DNC staff member Seth Rich. A lot of people have been asking questions, apparently some possibly suspicious circumstances, a lot of questions, and nobody seems to have the answers. What are you doing, and why have you begun to get involved in this issue?
Well, there's a lot of public controversy about his death, and what we are able to do is use the Freedom of Information laws maybe to get answers and settle the controversies one way or another. There are concerns about the handling of the police investigation and whether there was political meddling in it. And to that end, just last week, we filed Freedom of Information requests here in the District of Columbia with the police department and the mayor's office. And also, but even last year, we had filed a request with the FBI about Seth Rich because there were reports back then that he was a cooperating witness in the investigations that the FBI were conducting. We didn't get a records response. They said they didn't find anything, but we don't know. And then secondly, we have a separate FOIA for the DNC hack itself, because the WikiLeaks people are hinting, and I don't know if they're just playing with us or telling the truth, that Seth Rich was a source for some of the DNC emails that were hacked or leaked to the media last year. So we have a lawsuit about that DNC hacking attempt at the federal level. So we have just a number of Freedom of Information Act requests out there. And, you know, here in Washington, we're not allowed to ask certain questions about certain things because the establishment thinks it's too controversial. And I don't know whether there's a scandal associated with the death of Seth Rich. You know, it's a horrible circumstance. He was murdered. The likeliest answer is the simplest one. He was a random victim of violence here in the District of Columbia, which is too much crime, obviously. But a lot of public controversy about it, and all we're doing is asking the questions. Typically, the agencies have a few weeks to respond, and if, depending on the nature of the response, we're able to go to court to either force the release of records or challenge their failure to respond. And that's available to us under the law both at the federal level and here in the District of Columbia, which is a local government entity.
Do you think it's a little bit curious, for instance, that perhaps the Democratic National Committee or some perhaps Democrats in Congress have not gone in ahead of organizations like yours and others who are beginning to ask these kinds of questions?
Well, I think they're upset that the questions are being asked because it detracts from their conspiracy theory of the election, which is the Russians elected Donald Trump. And I don't understand why they're so sensitive about this. There's an official of the Democratic Party or a staff from the Democratic Party who was murdered. You would think they want to solve the crime too, and I suspect they do, but they don't like anyone asking any questions beyond suggesting it was just the typical random act of violence here in the District of Columbia, because it distracts from their conspiracy theory that they're running with, which is that Donald Trump shouldn't be president.